So I did an earlier interview with Anja Strome. She's a chief manager of the satellite for measuring the Earth's magnetic field. She confirmed me
Yes.
that North Pole is moving 50 kilometers per year and it's heading towards Siberia. How might this shift affect climate change?
Well, years ago, climate change was very much in the news, and I decided to educate myself. And the talk was mainly of reversals in the Earth's magnetic poles causing ice age. So I decided to take a look at the figures. And the figures are available from 1900 to 2005. And I plotted the positions of the magnetic poles against the climate change, the global temperatures. And I found a remarkable correlation. I did some statistics on it and found there was less than a 1% chance, so less than 1%, that my correlation was just due to chance. I couldn't actually prove what was happening, but the best explanation I think I could find was as the poles move, they influence the cosmic ray particles falling on the Earth. And as that concentration moves, perhaps from oceans to landmass, it's affecting the way the clouds form. And of course, clouds have a fantastic effect on global temperatures, not fully understood. And that, I think, is the best reason I could find for the correlation. The problem I have is that the establishment will not accept explanations like this because they're all fixed on human-induced climate change. And I did have a problem publishing my paper. The first time I sent it out, I got some very enthusiastic comments, but they told me it needed some statistics, which are not my best ideas. So I did statistics on them, put it back out for publication, but the guest editor had changed. And when I looked up his credentials, I noticed that he was very much a warmist, and he refused to put the paper back out for publication. So then I had to send it around to various people. And I eventually got it published with the help of Professor Jan Weitzer, who helped me write my first and only scientific paper. I think you've seen the correlations. The correlation between the North Magnetic Pole and the Northern Hemisphere temperatures is amazing. It's almost a perfect correlation when you look at the trends, just visually. And so there's no doubt in my mind that this probably is the cause of our climate change or global warming at the moment. The problem with the human-induced climate change is there's so many other things that could influence it. So for instance, the siting of the various temperature measurement stations. You know, when you have one next to a barbecue, it makes a bit of a mockery, really, of the temperature measurements. And also, recently, scientists have been going back over the temperature measurements and adjusting them. They say to harmonize collection methods. But unfortunately, all that has done is to increase the global temperatures, which statistically you wouldn't expect. You'd expect up and down. And so these things are now confusing the research. In terms of the Milankovitch cycles that you mentioned, they
Yes, I
certainly
just
do
want to
affect.
ask that. I saw in your document that you also mentioned the investigation of Milutin Milankovic. To what extent can this research be used in today's research on climate change? I mean, in your case and the movement of the North Pole, because there are a lot of speculation about this research.
I think the Milankovitch cycles are very long term, and so they do explain things like the ice ages. Over the period I'm studying them, of only 105 years, I think the likelihood is that the effect would hardly be noticeable. And again, if you look at my results, overwhelmingly, the correlations are remarkable and suggests that the global temperatures are being caused by the shift in the magnetic poles. And again, the tie-up between, or the correlation between the North Magnetic Pole and the Northern Hemisphere temperature anomaly is remarkable. If you look at the two trends, they're virtually coincidental.
So I had that, in a way, like that feeling that this is very connected. And when I was researching about that topic, I was asking artificial intelligence, and AI told me that nobody make an interview with you. Is that true? And why media is not interested for this topic? And not just media, but scientific circles as well.
I think one of the problems I had, for instance, I contacted NASA, and they came back and just said, well, correlations don't prove cause. You know, I'm not trying to correlate a bus timetable with global temperatures. I'm actually trying to correlate two significant events that could have an effect on each other. And again, I think that the problem is the establishment is so focused on human-induced climate change. They're rejecting anything else. And I don't have the backing of a university. This is my own personal research, which doesn't help too much. And I do wonder whether there's a problem with professional scientists worried that if they try to contradict the global consensus on human-induced climate change, that they will lose their positions.
Yeah, so very interesting. A few days ago, I made an interview with one scientist. He made like research how the war impact the climate change, and nobody from the governments give any data about that. I mean, it's like so much more making the effect of greenhouse, and then on the other hand, we don't have data. So what is your major data in your research? What do you have like the biggest, the strongest data that you discover in your research?
I think it's the North Pole seems to be the main driver. When you look at the model I use, which is the composite model of the poles as well, obviously as the North Pole moves, the South Pole moves as well. But in the figures I got, the main correlation outstanding was the North Pole and the Northern Hemisphere. I don't know how else I can get recognition. I contacted a number of scientists that have published articles on things like cosmic rays and clouds. A lot of them just didn't bother to reply. And again, I wonder whether it's again they're worried about the establishment.
And you mentioned cosmic rays, and in that document, I read it entire document, and the change in their influence on the weather conditions on Earth. Is it already possible to get some results since the North Pole has moved towards Siberia? I mean, it's moving. Do we need to update those data or those informations about cosmic rays and that change?
I mean, I could. My study goes to 2005, and it goes in 5-year chunks. And again, because I'm a bit unsure now about the actual data. If the data has been modified, then the correlations may not prove anymore. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't bothered to update it. All I can do is to monitor the research that is taking place and correspond with the relative scientists and see if they can help or shed some light on how the cosmic rays are affecting the cloud structure and how the cloud structure then affects the global temperatures.
You mentioned also the sun, and the magnetic field, of course, is making the biggest shield against the harmful sun rays. So what is happening with that? I mean, does the movement of the North Pole can influence and that shield as well?
The sun, again, there are various studies that say that the sun is the major dominant factor. And I think I would say it's fairly obvious. If the sun doesn't shine, you feel cold. And so the sun has a very variable temperature. It also has variability in the cosmic ray production. So again, that might influence what's going on. Again, I tried to find some research that I could tie into that, but I couldn't. And again, I come back to the fact that the correlations between the movement of the poles and the global temperatures is so close that this seems to be overriding other considerations.
So the bottom line will be what from your words? I mean, based on this interview, based on the entire research, how can we explain to the audience what is happening? So the North Pole is moving and it affects the climate change. In which way? Simply that my audience can understand that.
My feeling is that the movement of the poles is moving the way the cosmic rays interact with the clouds. And there's a possibility that as the poles move, then the cloud formation is moving as well. And somehow that is affecting the global temperatures. It may be that when the poles are nearer the ocean, you get a different effect in cloud formation as to when they're over land masses. And that's as far as I can go.
And will you continue your research in what direction?
Again, the only thing I can do is to monitor regularly the scientific research and see if I can find out the effect of clouds formation on global temperatures. But again, I think that's a problem in that the amount of research into the clouds it's there, but I'm not sure there's research that says if the clouds over the ocean or the clouds over the landmass, that's a significant factor.